That was my best Toad impression. You're welcome for that. You're hanging out, but no one's talking. What's everyone doing? Hey, June. How you doing, love? What do you got going today? Who else we got? Kim. Kim's hanging out. Kim wants to hear a story. And Wowie. Well, I appreciate you guys, even if you're just hanging out. For those on YouTube, this is a live stream, which means there are generally interruptions to the story. So if you're listening, know that I have a dog, 2 cats, and a very busy life. Things tend to come in and come out, so I tend to stop and go as I need to. Eventually, these will be shortened down to YouTube-style length videos, probably 30, 45 minutes each, a couple chapters each, and then someday I'll turn those into 3-hour segments and then 10-hour segments and all of that jazz. So, yeah. Oh, I need some water. You guys want to go on an adventure real quick? We're going to go to my kitchen. Oh, but I'm streaming on YouTube. Well, YouTube will get some lo-fi as we go get ourselves some water. This is kind of what I want to do. I want to stream and then just as I see fit, as I can. So eventually, this TikTok stream is going to end, and I'm going to start streaming VR in YouTube. Who's in here? Hello, Shark. Thanks for all the likes, Smash. Helps me a ton. So far, the Belgariad is pretty good. All things considered. And I am enjoying reading because I haven't read it in a really long time. I was an avid reader. I would read so much, it was disgusting, so unbelievable. Because at the time, when you were growing up, it was really the only thing that you could do. There was video games at the time when we were video games. So, thank you, Sean. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I'm reading and you're listening, and maybe then you'll go read and I'll listen. Maybe that'll be the case. We'll see what happens. Now that we have some water, we are better prepared for the day. So, I'm going to turn down the lo-fi music because it is a little loud, and I don't want to have to yell over the music. Although it's kind of funny, I tend to raise my voice when things get exciting. Hey! Carrie's in. Carrie has changed her name to Salty Leaks. But hello! How you doing, Carrie? I hope you're having a great day. We're reading a story today called The Belgariad. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, like I said, once I start, I'm not going to be paying attention to the live. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Once I start reading, you guys will have to entertain yourselves if you're wanting to hang out. If you're just here to listen to the drone of my voice and fall asleep to it, know that that means the world to me. If I am calm enough that you enjoy listening to my voice, I consider that a compliment. We're starting on chapter 2 here, and we're going to go ahead and start recording. So I'm going to do a quick intro record, and then we'll go ahead and get into the book. Thank you all for being here. All right. Start recording. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Legion, and we're working today on chapter 2 of The Belgariad. This not so short story is actually a series of 3 books that we will be reading. There is another set of 3 books after this. We'll see if we read through all of it. I don't know how interesting it is. So far, chapter 1 was pretty good. This is chapter 2 on. I don't know when we're going to stop. It could be when my voice decides to give out, whatever the case is. Remember that this is a live stream in addition to me recording, so that means life is going to happen. But the video will be adjusted down based off of what the needs are, so that it makes sense as a video rather than just a live stream VOD. So, if you are watching and engaged, know that you are loved, know that you are appreciated. If this is your first time here, you're part of something bigger. I promise. All right. Chapter 2. Not long after, in the endless noon of Garian's boyhood, the storyteller appeared once again at the gate of Faldor's farm. The storyteller, who seemed not to have a proper name as other men did, was a thoroughly disreputable old man. The knees of his hose were patched and his mismatched shoes were out at the toes. His long-sleeved woolen tunic was belted about the waist with a piece of rope, and his hood, a curious garment, not normally worn in that part of Sendaria, and one which Garian thought quite fine with its loosely fitting yoke covering shoulders, back, and chest, was spotted and soiled with spilled food and drink. Only his full cloak seemed relatively new. The old storyteller's white hair was cropped quite close, as was his beard. His face was strong and with a kind angularity to it, and his features provided no clue to his background. He did not resemble Erend, nor Cherik, Algor, nor Drasnian, Riven, nor Talnadrin, but seemed rather to derive from some racial stock long since forgotten. His eyes were a deep and merry blue, forever young and forever full of mischief. Small thing that I want to mention here is I don't love the use of this author's world names. They are obtrusive. There are too many. And I understand that they're trying to build a world around everything, but it's too much all at once. In chapter 1, it was real rough. In chapter 2, it sounds like we're continuing with more of it in our brains. Maybe we need to know it. We'll find out. The storyteller appeared from time to time at Faldor's farm, and was always welcome. He was in new truth a rootless vagabond who made his way in the world by telling stories. His stories were not always new, but there was in his telling of them a special kind of magic. His voice could roll like thunder or hush down like zephyr-like whisper. He would imitate the voice of a dozen men at once, whistle so like a bird that the birds themselves would come to him to hear what he had to say. And when he imitated the howl of a wolf, the sound could raise the hair on the back of his listeners' necks and strike a chill into their hearts like the depths of the Drasnian winter. He could make the sound of rain and wind, and even most miraculously the sound of snow falling. His stories were filled with sounds that made them come alive, and through the sounds and the words with which he wove the tales, sight and smell and the very feel of strange times and places seemed also to come to life for his spellbound listeners. All of this wonder he gave freely in exchange for a few meals, a few tankards of ale, and a warm spot in the hay barn in which to sleep. He roamed around the world seemingly as free of possessions as the birds. Between the storyteller and Aunt Pole there seemed to be a sort of hidden recognition. She had always viewed his coming with a kind of wry acceptance, knowing it seemed that the ultimate treasures of her kitchen were not safe so long as he lurked in the vicinity. Loaves and cakes had a way of disappearing when he was around, and his quick knife, always ready, could neatly divest the most carefully prepared goose of a pair of drumsticks, and a generous slab of breast meat with 3 swift slices when her back was turned. She called him Old Wolf, and his appearance at the gate of Faldor's farm marked the resumption of a contest which had obviously been going on for years. He flattered her outrageously, even as he stole from her, offered cookies or dark brown bread. He would politely refuse and then steal half a plateful before the platter had moved out of his reach. Her beer pantry and wine cellar might as well have been delivered into his hands immediately upon his appearance at the gate. He seemed to delight in pilferage, and if she watched him with a steely eye, he found quite easily a dozen confederates willing to sack her kitchen in exchange for a single story. Lamentably, among his most able pupils was the boy Garion. Often driven to distraction by the necessity of watching at once an old thief and a fledgling one, Aunt Pole would arm herself with a broom and drive them both from her kitchen with hard words and resounding blows. And the old storyteller, laughing, would flee with the boy to some secluded place where they would feast on the fruits of their pilferage, and the old man, tasting frequently from a flagon of stolen wine or beer, would regale his students with stories out of the dim past. The best stories, of course, were saved for the dining hall, when after evening meal was over and the plates had been pushed back, the old man would arise from his place and carry his listeners off into a world of magical enchantment. "Hey, hon, I'm doing really well. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Fry's here, too!" "Awesome. I am glad that we're here. Thanks, guys." Yeah, chat amongst yourselves if you're hanging out. Or if whatever the case is, I'm just reading a story. And of course, there's no chats on YouTube because I don't have any I think I have 6 subscribers. So the chances of me getting anybody on YouTube today are probably pretty slim. Oh, good. I'm glad. That's fantastic. I'm glad I could help. We'll continue. The best stories, of course, were saved for the dining hall, when after the evening meal was over and the plates had been pushed back, the old man would rise from his place and carry his listeners off into a world of magical enchantment. Tell us of the beginnings, my old friend," Father, always pious, said one evening, "and of the gods." Of the beginning of the gods, the old man mused. "A worthy subject, Falder, but a dry and dusty one." "I've noticed that you find all subjects dry and dusty, old wolf," Aunt Pole said, going to the barrel and drawing off a tankard of foamy beer for him. He accepted the tankard with a stately bow. "It's one of the hazards of my profession, Mistress Pole," he explained. He drank deeply, then sat the tankard aside. He lowered his head in thought for a moment, then looked directly, or so it seemed, at Garion. And then he did a strange thing, which he had never before done when telling stories in Falder's dining hall. He drew his cloak about him and rose to his full height. My YouTube is called Project Legion 008. Dami or Fry, would you mind posting that? Just put youtube.com/Project Legion 008. Thank you. "Behold," he said, his voice rich and sonorous, "at the beginning of days made the gods the world, and the sea, and the dry land also. And cast they the stars across the night sky, and did set the sun and his wife, the moon, in the heavens to give light unto the world. And the gods caused the earth to bring forth the beasts, and the waters to bud with fish, and the skies to flower with birds. And they made men also, and divided men into peoples. Now the gods were 7 in number, and were all equal, and their names were Belar, Shaldan, Nedra, Isa, Marza, Alder, and Torak. Garion knew the story, of course. Everyone in that oh, I'm sorry. This is not him talking. Sorry. All right, back to my normal voice. All right. Garion knew the story, of course. Everyone in that part of Sendaria was familiar with it, since the story of Alorn origin and the lands on three sides of Sendaria were Alorn kingdoms. Though the tale was familiar, however, he had never before heard it told in such a way. His mind soared as an imagination of the gods themselves strode the world in those dim, misty days when the world was first made, and a chill came over him at each mention of the forbidden name of Torak. He listened intently as the storyteller described how each god selected a people. For Belar, the Alorns, for Issa, the Niacins, for Chaldan, and for Torak, the Angarax, and he heard how the god Aldur dwelt apart and considered the stars in his solitude, and how some very few men he accepted as pupils and disciples. Garion glanced at others who were listening. Their faces were rapt with attention. Dernick's eyes were wide, and old Kralto's hands were clasped on the table in front of him. Faldor's face was pale, and tears stood in his eyes. Aunt Pole stood at the rear of the room. Though it was not cold, she too had drawn her mantle about her and stood very straight, her eyes intent. And it came to pass, the storyteller continued, that the god Aldur caused to be made a jewel in the shape of a globe, and behold, in the jewel was captured the light of certain stars that did glitter in the northern sky. And great was the enchantment upon the jewel which men called the Orb of Aldur. For with the orb could Aldur see that which he had been, that which was, and that which was yet to be. Garion realized he was holding his breath, for he was now completely caught up in the story. He listened in wonder as Torak stole the orb and the other gods made war on him. Torak used the orb to sunder the earth and let the sea to drown the land, until the orb struck back against misuse by melting the left side of his face and destroying his left hand and eye. The old man paused and drained his tankard. Aunt Pole, with her mantle still close about her, brought him another, her movement somehow stately and her eyes burning. "Oh, I've never heard the story told so, Dernick said so. Wait. Hold on. Is Dernick the... I think Dernick is the... Yeah, Dernick's the smithy, so I had a different voice for him. Let me try again. "I've never heard the story told so," Dernick said softly. "It's the Book of Alorn. It's only told in the presence of kings," Kralto said just as softly. "I knew a man once who had heard it at the king's court at Sendar, and he remembered some of it. I've never heard it all before, though." The story continued, recounting how Belgariad the sorcerer led Cherak and his 3 sons to regain the orb 2,000 years later, and how the western lands were settled and guarded against the host of Torak. The gods removed from the world, leaving Riva to safeguard the orb in its fortress on the Isle of the Winds. There he forged a great sword and set the orb in its hilt. While the orb remained there and the line of Riva sat on the throne, Torak could not prevail. Then Belgarath sent his favorite daughter to Riva to be a mother to kings, while his other daughter remained with him and learned his art, for the mark of sorcerers was upon her. The old storyteller's voice was now very soft as his ancient tale drew to a close. "And between them," he said, "did Belgarath and his daughter the sorceress Polgara set enchantments to keep watch against the coming of Tarak. And some men say they shall abide against him his coming, even though it be until the very end of days. For it is prophesied that one day shall maimed Torak come against the kingdoms of the west to reclaim the orb which he so dearly purchased. And the battle shall be joined between Torak and the fruit of the line of Reva. And in that battle shall be decided the fate of the world. And then the old man fell silent and let his mantle drop from about his shoulders, signifying that his story was at an end. There was a long silence in the hall, broken only by a few faint sputters from the dying fire and the endless song of frogs and crickets in the summer night outside. Finally, Faldor cleared his throat and rose, his bench scraping loudly on the wooden floor. You have done us much honor tonight, my old friend, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This is an event we will remember all our lives. You have told us a kingly story, not usually wasted on ordinary people. The old man grinned then, his blue eyes twinkling. I haven't consorted with many kings of late, Faldor, he laughed. They all seem too busy to listen to the old tales, and a story must be told from time to time if it's not to be lost. Besides, who knows these days where a king might be hiding? They all laughed at that and began to push back their benches, for it was growing late, and time for those who must be up with the first light of the sun to seek their beds. Will you carry a lantern for me to the place where I sleep? Will you carry a lantern for me to a place where I sleep, boy? The storyteller asked Garion. Gladly, Garion said. Jumping up and running into the kitchen, he fetched down a square glass lantern, lighted the candle inside it from one of the banked kitchen fires, and went back into the dining hall. Faldor was speaking with the storyteller as he turned away. Garion saw a strange look pass between the old man and Aunt Pole, who still stood at the back of the hall. Are we ready then, boy? The old man asked Garion as Garion came up to him. Whenever you are, Garion replied, and the two of them turned and left the hall. Why's that story unfinished? Garion asked, bursting with curiosity. Why did you stop before we found out what happened when Torak met the Ribbon King? That's another story, the old man explained. Will you tell it to me sometime? Garion pressed. The old man laughed. Torak and the Ribbon King haven't as of yet met, he said, so I can't very well tell it, can I? At least not until after their meeting. It's only a story, Garion objected. Isn't it? Is it? The old man removed a flagon of wine from under his tunic and took a long drink. Who's to say what's only a story and what's truth disguised as a story? It's only a story, Garion said stubbornly, suddenly feeling very hard-headed and practical like any good Sendar. It can't really be true. Why, Belgariad the sorcerer would be I don't know how old, and people don't live that long. 7,000 years? The old man said. What? Belgariad the sorcerer is 7,000 years old, perhaps a bit older. That's impossible, Garion said. Is it? How old are you? 9. Next Aristide. And in 9 years, you've learned everything that's both possible and impossible. You're a remarkable boy, Garion. Garion flushed. Well, he said, somehow not quite so sure of himself. The oldest man I ever heard of is old Weldrick over in Mildren's farm. Dernick says he's over 90, and that he's the oldest man in the district. Where am I? And it's a very big district, of course, the old man said solemnly. How old are you? Garion asked, not wanting to give up. Old enough, boy, the old man said. Still only a store, Garion insisted. Many good and solid men would say so, the old man told him, looking up at the stars. Good men who will live out their lives believing only in what they can see and touch. But there's a world beyond what we can see and touch, and that world lives by its own laws. What may be impossible in the very ordinary world is very possible there, and sometimes the boundaries between the two worlds disappear, and then who can say what's possible and impossible? I think I'd rather live in the ordinary world, Garion said. The other one sounds too complicated. We don't always have a choice, Garion, the storyteller told him. Don't be too surprised if that other world someday chooses you to do something that must be done. Some great and noble thing. Me? Garion said incredulously. Stranger things have happened. Go to bed, boy. I think I'll look at the stars for a while. The stars and I are very old friends. The stars? Garion asked, looking up involuntarily. You're a very strange old man, if you don't mind me saying so. Indeed, the storyteller agreed. Quite the strangest you'll likely meet. I like you all the same, Garion said quickly, not wanting to give offense. That's a comfort, boy, the old man said. Now go to bed. Your Aunt Pole will be worried about you. Later, as he slept, Garion's dreams were troubled. The dark figure of maimed Torak loomed in the shadows, and monstrous things pursued him across twisted landscapes where the possible and impossible merged and joined as that other world reached out to claim him. Chapter 3. We're going to take a small break. We're going to go ahead and check in on chat. How's everybody doing? We got so many likes thanks to our good friend Shark over here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, man. It means a lot to me. And the fact that you're just liking the video because you like it, and that means a lot to me too. So thank you. Ooh, we have someone in YouTube. If you're in YouTube, type something in chat so I can see. I don't know who's in YouTube chat. Ice cold water from the beginning of stream. Yes, it's a big tankard. Yes, you should drink. I think you're supposed to drink one of these a day. It's 64 ounces. Does Mur want to go live? Mur does not want to go live. Does anybody want to go live? Not at the moment. I think we're okay. All right. Chapter 3 isn't very long either, so I think I'm going to read that, but I'm debating if I want to break it up or not. Because reading can be hard on my throat. So I'm debating if I want to break it up and do some streaming through YouTube on some VR stuff. I don't know how well VR streaming would work on TikTok. I don't know how that would work. I would probably have to get OBS set up to stream on TikTok instead of using my camera phone. And I don't know how to do that. I tried to figure it out, but I think I just really kind of confused my stuff. So, but yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and take off for a bit here. I'm going to go stream. I'm going to continue to stream on YouTube. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Maybe I'll start a new stream on YouTube. So if you're wanting to hang out, I'm going to create a new stream for YouTube. All right. Thank you guys all so much for being here.